Hello.
Howdy.
How's it going?
It's going pretty good. Sorry for being a little bit late.
All good, all good. Joseph, do you mind if I get your pronouns before we start?
They, them.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, 8x8 always changes stuff.
Yeah. There's so many different platforms that have been used throughout the years.
Yeah. I coach and judge in high school as well, and so I almost joined as Judge Joseph Wofford. All right.
Everyone okay with using speech drop?
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. Is the AF, which version of the AF is it? There's 3 on the wiki. Is it the one from Pi Kappa Delta?
Yeah, it's going to be the one from PKD.
Sick.
A couple of new cards, but the makeup is exact.
But the plan text is the same.
Yep.
I want to jump in the speech drop, and then I'm going to go grab a drink.
Okay. I am putting it in the chat now.
Good to go.
Are you able to see the speech drop in the chat?
Yeah.
Cool, cool. Okay, and the app is uploaded. So if I could get some form of confirmation from the judge and my opponent, and I can get started.
Yeah, I'll be good to go in a second. It's loading right now.
Yep, all good. And also, just so you all know, I'm not going to be able to see you while I'm speaking, so you'll have to speak out if there's some sort of issue.
Sick. Same for me, so good that somebody else said it.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. I think my word chose right now to crash.
Oh,
no. Hey, there it goes. Okay. Wait a sec. I'm going to go. I have a dog knocking at the door, so I'm going to go let them in, and then I'll be good to go.
Okay, we can't hear you, or at least I can't hear you, Kelly. I can see you now, but I can't hear you now.
Sick.
Joseph, are you able to hear our judge?
Right now, I think Kelly is muted.
Okay. Still can't hear you.
So I can't hear, is I guess yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
you're okay? Okay. All right, then.
Yeah, let me mute myself and then I'm good.
All right, cool. Then I will get started. All right. First off is inherency. No policy like the plan will pass Congress. Republicans will block it. Matthews in 2020. Even if Democrats end up taking this into the path, it remains tricky. A GOP and the Senate minority would likely block every one of the initiatives. Biden will also have to deal with the hostile Supreme Court. Plan. The United States Congress will pass a bill signed by the president that removes caps on Chinese immigration across EB visas 1, 2, and 3, family visas, and refugees, and that removes restrictions on country limit for immigration visas, and that removes referral restrictions for Uyghurs. Solvency. A. The U.S. should grant P2 status to Uyghurs and removes restrictions requiring that they get referrals. The program has worked in numerous other instances. Inos and Lang in 2021. The most tangible thing the U.S. government can do to support Uyghurs is to fully use its refugee admissions program, making the Uyghurs a priority group for resettlement. P2 status enables candidates to bypass referral from other entities, whether they're currently inside or outside their country of origin. Washington has a track record of success with P2. Special status has been extended to help refugees from Myanmar and religious minorities in the Middle East. The special status could provide an important lifeline for those Uyghurs who have already fled China, yet continue to face persecution. For instance, in Thailand, Uyghurs face extrajudicial imprisonment. In Turkey, continues to deport Uyghurs back to China, even those to whom it has already granted asylum. B. This spurs an international coalition to help stop genocide. Enos and Lang in 2021. The U.S. government should press other countries to offer safe haven to Uyghurs. With key countries, Washington can send a clear message of support by stepping up and offering P2 status, which will hopefully strengthen those countries' willingness to accept Uyghur refugees. Washington must work with its international allies. This is an opportunity as a new administration to begin for the U.S. to not only support an oppressed group, but also to demonstrate strong global leadership. C. Open immigration weakens China's ability to project power and develop dangerous tech. Narste in 2020. This represents a global opportunity to join investments from China. Every Chinese national with a college degree should be able to get a green card without a numerical cap. All the U.S. government has to do to wipe out Chinese government talent recruitment efforts and raise that percentage even more is allow them to come study, work, and live here with a minimum bureaucratic fuss and the removal of arbitrary visa restrictions. D. We have an ethical obligation to accept Chinese victims of repression, which is a huge part of the country. Letting in Chinese immigrants wins global opinion. Soman in 2020. China has detained some women and Uyghur in concentration camps. The wave of repression in recent years has also impacted the dominant ethnic group who question policy. These and other victims of Chinese government repression deserve refuge. We can be the nation that even the populations of our adversaries can join. That's a much better image than being the nation that closes its doors. It also has a better chance of effectively countering China in any geopolitical competition and winning world opinion. And E. There are multiple ways that immigration sparks structural reform in China. McQuillan in 2020. Migration can pressure home governments to enact beneficial reforms because migration drains revenue and talent, sparks communication of liberalizing ideas, and generates remittances that can make some people less dependent on their government and more willing to speak out against it. Now onto my first advantage, genocide. A. Independent analysis shows China in violation of every article of the UN Genocide Convention. Davidson in 2021. The Chinese government has breached every single article of the UN Genocide Convention. The report published by a nonpartisan think tank is one of the first independent non-government legal examinations of China's treatment of Uyghurs. B. We have an ethical obligation to act on genocide. Mitchell in 2020. The marriage of settler colonialism as official policy and of harnessing technology in service of brutal dictatorship and ethnic Han supremacy cemented Beijing's control, but resulted in one of the greatest mass atrocities the world has seen in decades, and yet silence, most especially those on the left. The CCP has constructed the largest concentration camp system since the Nazi regime, one that continues to expand. The silence stems from prioritization of domestic policy. It's ripe time for the left to reclaim humanitarianism and its tradition of bearing witness. Its previous campaigns targeting South African apartheid provide models. Judah said history will judge us by what we said about Xinjiang. C. We need action now. No time to deconstruct globalized root causes. Essa in 2021. Gross argues the U.S. and China's approaches to counterterrorism are driven by many of the same destructive globalized currents: Islamophobia, capitalism, and nationalism. China is a capitalist state. Wang said some people are building a case that this is about settler colonialism, of Islamophobia, or capitalism, but those are long-term projects. Something has to happen now. And now on to my second and final advantage, democracy. A. Immigration policy is key to democracy globally. The alternative is war. French in 2021. The public health crisis brought about by COVID-19 has created an enormous economic crisis. COVID-19 has provoked doubts worldwide about whether democracy still has much to offer the world. But all of these problems come together in a single nexus: immigration. Opening the U.S. to dramatically more people from other countries will constitute an important and unavoidable piece of any solution to any of these challenges. Immigration can make an even more dramatic difference on America's future competition with China. China's population will peak, but with different immigration policies, there's no reason the U.S. should peak. The U.S. can try to sustain its leadership by investing in its usual defense outlays with all the risk of conflict, or it can leverage its unmatched ability to absorb newcomers. For all the tarnish America has heaped on its own image, one aspect clearly remains alive: the desire of people to migrate. More open immigration would also help the growth and reinforcement of democracy. B, China needs to be top focused in order to prevent a global illiberal order. Palmer in 2020. The temptation to make China second priority will be there. Deprioritizing China would be a dangerous mistake. China's belief that the United States is the main obstacle to its creation of a new illiberal global order on its terms won't go away. It should be the first item on any U.S. agenda. And finally, C. Democracy is key to preventing violence and war and increasing human welfare. Diamond in 2016. Democracies are less violent toward their citizens and more protective of human rights. They do not go to war with one another. Their citizens enjoy higher life expectancies and lower levels of infant and maternal mortality than people living under other forms of government. Authoritarian regimes are inherently unstable. If an autocracy is successful, it produces a wealthy and educated population. That population will construct a civil society that will sooner or later demand political change. But if an autocracy is unsuccessful, it is liable to collapse. And with that, I am open for cross-ex.
Let me get my timer and then I'm good to go.
Okay.
Okay. First question.
Yep.
The first piece of Enos and Lang evidence says that we should grant P2 status. How does the plan create priority status for Uyghur people?
The plan, like is specified in the plan text, removes referral restrictions, which is the same thing as granting P2 status.
Do you have a piece of evidence that indicates that?
Yeah, that's what the Enos and Lang card says.
Yeah, I guess. Okay, cool. The second piece of Enos and Lang evidence, it indicates, quote, it's important that they agree with the United States on pathways to safety. Do you read a piece of evidence that indicates that Canada, Australia, and Europe agree on this pathway to safety?
Where does it explicitly say the word that they need to agree?
Europe, Australia, and Canada care about the Uyghur crisis too, and it's important that they agree with the United States on pathways to safety, period, end quote.
Oh, that's not a highlighted part. Okay, got you. Yeah, but the second highlighted part of that says this is an opportunity for the U.S. to demonstrate strong.
Yeah, and the antecedent of this would be the sentence before it. So I'm asking if you have a piece of evidence that says, or like if you have an anecdotal argument or something that says that, like they agree.
No, I mean, it just says that this plan has a chance of strengthening those countries' willingness to accept Uyghur refugees.
Okay.
It is not just about like those three countries.
The top, I mean, Europe's a continent. The top part of the Noritsa evidence unhighlighted says that the problem with China is that a third of them will be 60 or older compared to 22% of the United States. How does that, like, why is immigration implicated in this?
Not sure what your question is.
I guess like the top piece of this evidence says that like a big problem with Chinese competitiveness is that their workforce is aging. How does the plan resolve that?
Yeah, well, part of that is that contributes to sort of like China's current population problems. And the A card on democracy talks about how immigration is implicated as the nexus to all of these sorts of issues.
E, the McKeon evidence in the solvency, it indicates simply that migration can pressure governments to enact, like, because tax revenue and stuff. Why does China care about tax?
Well, that's one of the warrants. The other warrants are that it sparks communication of liberalizing ideas and generates remittances, both of which are unique, like warrants.
But that's the reason why immigration's okay. The genocide stuff, I guess, like, why does like allowing visas here solve genocide? Like, they're putting these people in like concentration camps. How do giving them a visa resolve that?
Right. So we read an argument that we have an ethical obligation to accept Chinese victims of oppression, but also the plan is a signal that helps to check back against China. And I can read additional evidence on that too.
Okay, that's fine. I'm going to take a little bit of prep starting now. Okay, stop prep. I have like... Oh, did someone else time that? Because I hit the timer button twice.
I was not timing.
Do we want to just say I used 2 minutes and call it good?
That sounds about right to me.
Oh,
apparently,
you rock. You're the bomb. All right, I'm saving it.
How many off is it going to be?
3.
Okay.
Oh, what tournament is this? It's like March. Oh, it's April now. That is, I just realized yesterday was April Fool's. All right, let's see. Okay, it should be up.
Gotcha.
All right. Oh, you're good, Kelly. You're good. Can you send something in the chat though to let me know that you're when you're good for the speech? And then Tyler, you can just like say.
Yep, I'm ready whenever you are.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay, I'm gonna start. And 3, 2, 1. First off is politics. Biden has the PC to get infrastructure passed now, but any action on immigration trades off. That's Kapur in 329. Biden's overall job is 54% job approval is 54%. A strong economy and an approval rating above 50% could be a bulwark for Democrats. Voters are quick to forget about what a president has done and move on to the next problem. It speaks to an ability for him to be a transformative president. He has such tremendous political capital right now. Biden has an opportunity to build on those economic ratings with upcoming efforts to invest in infrastructure, which have a path to bypassing the Senate 60-vote threshold. But Republicans see openings elsewhere. Republicans have focused on immigration in particular to mobilize their base after Trump struck a chord with many conservative voters by portraying newcomers and refugees as a threat to native-born Americans. Democrats are going to overreach on immigration. Enacting his policies risks igniting a backlash. Unlike infrastructure funding, those issues do not qualify for a simple majority vote in the Senate. And partisan bickering trades off with passage. Stimulus proves. It's Mattingly in 3-7. The message to White House staff is Biden's legislative proposal nears completion is simple. There is no room for complacency between implementation of provisions and Biden's agenda. Biden has no plans of resting any laurels. The rescue plan will make a real difference in the lives of regular Americans. The legislative process with a slim majority in the House and no margin for error in the Senate provided the first glimpse of the balancing act Biden will face as the administration moves on to other items. And infrastructure is key to soft power and meeting Paris climate goals. It's Los Ocean 20. Build Back Better could help the U.S. regain soft power advantage it is ceded to China while repairing relations with U.S. allies in its fight against climate change. A green foreign infrastructure program would contrast with China's Belt Road Initiative. The U.S. investments and assistance for green infrastructure. Many countries might consider a program attractive after their experiences with China's in the wake of the stumbles. China has pared back its lending. Its pause provides an opening for U.S. program. Build Back Better aligns with allies such as the European Union and South Korean green infrastructure. It could rebuild bonds. A unified U.S.-Europe green recovery could pressure China to emphasize green infrastructure lending and reduce fossil fuel dependence. Leadership could enable the U.S., Europe, and China to join forces for meeting Paris goals. The U.S. must act while countries are developing their recovery and extinction. Contrary models are wrong. That's Ing in 19. Climate change causes global extinction due to cascading effects, positive feedbacks, multiplicative factors, critical thresholds, and tipping points. An abrupt ice sheet collapse could cause rapid sea level rise. Replacement of ice by a liquid increases absorption of sunlight, leading to faster warming. Drying of forests increases forest fires and releases more carbon. And the threat of sea level rising is well known. Likely and imminent threats to the survivability of mankind. The adaptability limit to the climate change due to the heat of stress from high temptation. Even modest warming could expose the fraction of the world to the unprecedented heat. Second, my interpretation is legal immigration excludes refugees and asylees. That's humanitarian admissions. It's legally distinct from it's a legally distinct category and serves as a bright line in immigration policy that's passed and fixed in 94. The structure of U.S. immigration policy are frequently misunderstood, and immigration policy needs to be reviewed as 3 fundamentally different sets of rules. There are those that govern legal immigration, those that govern humanitarian admissions, and those that govern illegal entry. The distinction is important. Each set of rules is governed by different legislation, involves different bureaucracies, and is guided by different goals. The bright line has been blurred by the legitimacy of legal and humanitarian admissions has been eroded, and the number of immigrants entering the United States as refugees as legal immigrants and illegal immigrants differ in important ways that are ignored in policy debates and violation. The plan accepts, they've removed the referral status, and they do a couple of other things to accept refugees, which are humanitarian admissions. And vote negative for limits and ground. Include humanitarian emissions massively explodes the topic. They are separate bodies of literature involving hundreds of possible affirmatives and thousands of hours of research that make preparation impossible, allowing refugee and asylum maps shifts the core of the topic away from legal immigration. Third off is parole. The United States federal government should grant indefinite parole to all EB visa 1, 2, and 3 applicants, family visa applicants, and all refugees and their families, and grant indefinite parole for Uyghur people or for Uyghurs, and announce that parole will be continual, won't be revoked, and parolees won't be deported. And the counterplan is a form of creative unilateralism that uses executive discretion to expand the power of parole. This empirically solves and is legal. That's Cox and Rodriguez in 15. The president used powers to advance his own immigration agenda. These have often been innovative, accomplishing objectives Congress certainly did not intend, or expanding or repurposing Congress's original design. The best example is the president's use of parole power. Parole permits the president to exercise discretion, allow inadmissible citizens. Eisenhower's admission of 15,000 Hungarians. The power serves as a central tool of American refugee policy. Presidents continue to wield the discretionary power in order to admit large groups of non-citizens. A combination of settled expectations and political pressures eventually led Congress to make those temporary admissions permanent. It is important to see how the president made those supposed new constraints on the authority his own, and what matters is that the president utilizes delegated authority to serve a decidedly executive agenda, the creation of a refugee selection. The authority is also continues to serve as a basis for innovation. Obama invoked parole to provide relief for a large number of unauthorized immigrants. Memorandum reflects an intent to provide relief a favored category of unauthorized immigrants. This sort of creative unilateralism has arisen in many other instances. Case. You can skip the plan header. Solvency. The second piece of Enos and Hardin and Lang evidence, it literally doesn't say that open immigration does anything. It says that the United States should pressure other countries, right? It says that Europe, Australia, and Canada care about the Uyghur crisis too, and it's important that they agree with the United States on pathways to safety. Otherwise, that kind of like expansion that the affirmative predicates sort of solvency off of doesn't function. Also, like the argument that gets brought up in process, like the antecedent of this is this sentence, like this refers to like this section of the paper. Okay, next. Lack of background checks, gerrymandering, and inflated job reports rampant in the status quo. EB-5 program impose a national security threat. Rampant in the EB-5 program pose a national security threat. Grassine 17. It is deeply flawed and has strayed very much from its original intent. Jobs created are not direct or verifiable jobs. They are indirect and based on vague estimates and economic modeling. There are no prohibitions against foreign governments owning or operating regional centers. Background checks aren't required for anyone associated with the regional center, and regional centers gerrymander targeted employment areas and the boundaries that they're in to encompass economically distressed areas in order to come at a lower investment level. These jobs created aren't actually created in those areas and projects that those in those areas, and nothing better supports the need for serious reform rather than work done to draw the attention of the program's very real national security concerns. We have sent several letters and conducted transcribed interviews with key players of an NRC working group to assess how rampant fraud and abuse are in the program. And removing cap makes backlogs worse. That's gently in 18. The country cap doesn't impact the length of the backlog at all. It changes who is in the backlog. If you remove the country cap, the total number of visa numbers doesn't increase. You still have the same number of people applying. The same number of people will be stuck in the backlog. It's still the same 100 years. Removing the country cap will make it horrible for 100% of the people from every country. Okay, I'm open for cross.
Okay, sorry about that. I had to navigate the million tabs I have open.
It's the first round in the morning.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Then let's go ahead, and I want to start on case with the solvency stuff. So the first thing I want to start with is this argument about EB-5, the EB-5 program posing a national security threat. Are you saying that? Are you attempting to securitize the issue of refugees, like refugees coming in?
No. I mean, your plan text specifies like 4 different things. If anything, you could read it as a pick out of the EB part of it. And the tagline's a little bit misleading. This paper's in the context of just the EB program writ large. Says that, yeah. So there's a problem with the EB program. Obviously, the parole counterplan resolves any ethical, implicative arguments that you might want to go for, because obviously, UNT is very interested in the Uyghur crisis as well, and we'd like to do something about that. The parole counterplan kind of resolves those sorts of arguments because we've suggested a way to resolve those problems.
What's the impact to the security threat?
You know what? I don't think that we've read one in the 1 and C, but we'll probably read some evidence in the NR. I think it's worth going for.
Okay, cool. Do you read an impact to making backlogs worse, or is it kind of the same deal?
Right. So I guess that there's like some app implications about like competitiveness from the EB stuff. It says that it won't solve. So the country cap doesn't impact. So if you remove the Chinese country cap, all that happens, especially because there's still caps in other areas, all that happens is the same amount of people from China apply, right? But the same amount of people can't be let in because they can't be processed. The backlog is due to a processing error, means that there's like no solvency.
Okay. Just to clarify, moving forward in the debate, and this was something that wasn't asked in cross-ex, but we removed the entirety of country cap, not just for China.
Okay, cool. So same thing, right? Again, it's a processing error, this evidence indicates, which means that they can't process,
Yeah, for sure. Okay, going up to the T, I just have a clarification question about the violation.
Yeah.
The violation is just that we include refugees, and you're saying that's humanitarian admissions and that shouldn't be allowed, right?
I mean, yeah, right. It's that portion of the plan text that indicates that you can include humanitarian admissions. We think that there's like, especially with the juxtaposition between the EB visas, I think that that's like a massive, a problematic. The pass don't fix evidence indicates that it creates like policy confusion when we don't know what sorts of policies we're debating about, especially since they're hindered by like different bureaucracies and so on.
Okay. Then going up to the infrastructure DA, how is U.S. infrastructure key to solving global climate goals?
Yeah, so the Losos evidence is sick. It indicates like a few things, but the most important thing is that we generate soft power by investing in green infrastructure, which the bill does.
Okay, cool. I'm gonna take probably about 30 seconds of prep, starting now. Okay, that is my time. I'll save and upload, and then I'll give an order right before I start the speech. Okay, doc is uploaded, and 3:30 remaining. Cool. The order is going to be T, the infrastructure DA, the parole CP, and then case in order of solvency and the advantages. Okay, I got you, Judge, is good to go. Joseph, are you good to go?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good.
Okay, awesome. Then let's get started. Okay, first off, on the refugee T, we meet with this part of the plan can fall under immigration reform, which makes their inter be relevant. 3, counter-interpretation. Legal immigration refers to permanent resident status. Rivera in 2019. Legal immigration refers to instances where non-citizen immigrants in the country legally under permanent resident status. There are several avenues for LPR, family-based visas, deployment-based visas, marriage-based visas, and refugee status. 4, we meet. All our app removes restrictions on avenues to LPR. 5, standards. A, ground. Negative gets all the same ground about bringing people into the U.S. and A, LPR being bad. B, education. Refugees are the immigration issue of our time. Excluding them means we don't really learn about the issue. C, other words, checks all their arguments. D, they misread the resolution. It never says immigration visas. ERF is massive. It deals with well over 1 billion people and covers a number of visas. There's plenty of ground. 6, good is good enough. We have reasonable interpretation of the topic. Searching for perfect interpretation detracts from an examination of the issues. Instead, we have endless topicality debates. This is bad for education. Now go to the infrastructure DA. First, major problems for infrastructure and rules means parts will be cut. Politico in 2021. A sprawling bill that can afford to lose 3 Democratic votes in the House and 0 in the Senate would also need to survive a slew of procedural hurdles. Senate rules may stop him from getting Biden's complete proposal to a floor vote. Some fissures within the party are already beginning to surface. Salt deduction could also be a point of contention. Next turn, the plan is legislative win that is necessarily bipartisan. The fiat nature of the plan disproves the link. Next turn, immigration plan is keyed up momentum and goodwill necessary to more action and stopping backlash. Politico in 2020. Democrats Joette at the Center for American Progress can't let any opportunity to pass for any legislative tool to go unused. Other advocates have urged Democrats to take wins where they can get them, saying it will build goodwill and an appetite for even more action. If Democrats don't begin moving those components, there will be a lot of backlash coming because everyone knows that this is the moment, said managing director of immigration for the Emerson Collective. Next. Turn. Biden needs to push on all fronts. It's the only way to secure wins, and political capital is not a thing. Roberts in 2020. Republicans will wage full-on war on Biden. Obama's efforts to collect and spend political capital were for naught. What happened was a wall of opposition for Republicans built on bad faith objectives. A fully polarized two-party system really is a zero-sum game. Any victories come at the other side's expense. Biden should run a blitz, do everything at once. By constantly blundering forward, Trump has helped to chart which institutions provide real resistance. By constantly acting, he simply overwhelmed the system. Biden should learn the lesson that all that matters is what gets put on paper. Next, turn. Immigrants are key to infrastructure. New American economy in 2020. Immigrants are playing critical roles in construction, infrastructure, and related industries that are essential to keeping America running. This turns the entirety of the advantage because you need immigration in order to satisfy the call for infrastructure. Next, no link. Fiat means the plan happens immediately and is by definition bipartisan. It passes the Dem House, Republican Senate, and is passed by Biden. Next, on the impact level, warming is not an existential threat. Piper in 2019. The report frustrated many climate scientists. 6 researchers argued that the report overstates the risk from climate change. The fact that is that even the most pessimistic reports evaluated responsibly don't suggest climate change will end human civilization. And finally, U.S. can eliminate emissions and change nothing. No modeling based on infrastructure. Now I'm in 2019. The U.S. now accounts for just 15% of the world's annual emissions. The developing world is rising in energy consumption far faster than the U.S. The U.S. could completely eliminate its carbon emissions and barely affect the course of climate. Now onto the parole CP. First, perm do both. The counterplan links to the net benefits if it solves any of the AF. 3, congressional law specifically bans the counterplan. Cox and Rodriguez. In 2009, the Refugee Act had both the goal and the effect of constraining the executive. The act restricted the president's use of the parole authority to admit large groups of migrants, making it more difficult politically for the executive to pursue its anti-communist foreign policy agenda through immigration law. Next, no solvency. Only legislation sends the signal. It shows bipartisan support for the policy. Executive action would be seen as weak and temporary. Kuzmic in 2020. These are issues that should be sitting squarely in front of Congress. Continuing to put off immigration reform puts issues in the hands of the executive branch and exacerbates the negative effects. It makes for a back and forth that is untenable and contributes partisanship, not long-term solutions. 5, agent counterplans are bad and a voting issue. A, competition. They move the entirety of the 1AC and change the question being asked in the debate. The app doesn't have enough time to get back into the game. And B, education. They encourage teams to read the same generic counterplan to avoid discussing the specifics of the case. Now on the case. There are a couple of arguments that are made by my opponent on the solvency flow. The first argument is that my B card on solvency doesn't say that open immigration does anything. It just says that the U.S. should pressure other countries and that Europe, Australia, and Canada must agree. There's still a chance of solvency on the basis of this. Like the thesis of the arguments here, like even with the antecedent argument that my opponent makes, is that the only way to build an international coalition and to spur other countries' willingness to accept Uyghur refugees is for Washington to work with its international allies and to for the U.S. to offer a safe haven to Uyghurs by removing referral restrictions. Additionally, the P2 status, that we don't grant P2 status is nullified because my first A card on Enos and Lang says that P2 status is key because it removes the referral restrictions. And since we do that, since that's planned action, like we do what makes the P2 status, granting of the P2 status so key, like the affirmative solves. Next, my opponent says that issues in the EB program pose a national security threat. First, the securitization of refugees is bad and our conceded moral obligation claims outweigh, but also they don't get to read any impacts to this or the backlogs argument in the 1NR. They should have read impacts to these like turns and these solvency arguments in the first speech. I don't have like satisfactory time to respond to them. So on like as an underview to the solvency flow and the rest of case, like my genocide and democracy advantage, you can extend both of the advantages across case as completely conceded, including my 2 moral and ethical obligation claims, which means we outweigh and you have to vote affirmative.
I'm going to start 207 in 3, 2, 1. Okay. I think I have like one card that I'm gonna read, so I'll send that. Okay, I'm saving the card now. While I'm uploading it, the order, it should be up now. The order is going to be T, the disad, the counter plan.
Okay, I have it up. I'm ready when you are.
Okay, sick. Kelly, let me know when you're good. I guess I gotta open the. All right, dope. Okay, I'll start in 3, 2, 1. First on topicality, you can concede that we aren't going for it, but I'll answer T's bad. The endless topicality debates doesn't make a lot of sense because they don't have an internal link to why endless topicality debates are bad. If anything, past on fix indicate that we can have conversations about immigration by talking about the kind of distinctions between the different categories, infrastructure. The first piece of evidence they read, the political evidence, it's really bad. The political evidence indicates that like it needs to resolve procedural hurdles, but the PC stuff that we'll read later is like really important. It says fissures in the party are beginning to surface, and that SALT deduction is good, but like on Wednesday, like this, there's no reason why this wouldn't be a reason to pass the bill. It says it could afford to lose 3 Democratic votes and 0 in the Senate, but it doesn't specify like whose votes they would lose. It just says some fissures in the party are beginning to surface, but Pelosi and Schumer will probably smooth that out, and they haven't read an evidence that they won't. This other turn, the plan is legislative win that is necessarily bipartisan. The fiat nature of the plan disproves the link. This is extraordinarily bad. They should get the least amount of fiat necessary to pass the plan, which means that the president has to push it through deadlock. Anything else means that they could always say that like, oh, fiat resolves the link to the disad because it changes the way that politics works. No, we've read evidence that indicates that immigration is unpopular with Republicans, and Manchin might not like it, which means that you should probably prefer that over this theoretical fiat argument. The political evidence that they read, it's in the context of advocacy groups, not politicians. The link is about the way that politicians backlash. This is written that some dude named Marshall Fitz says that they really don't like, from the Emerson Collective, just says that they really don't like Biden's immigration plans. That's not a reason to reject the disad. The Roberts evidence says that Biden needs to push on all fronts to secure the win. I don't understand what this evidence means. I guess it said, and then they argue that political capital is not real. So that's where I'll read the card that I sent on the doc. Never mind. Sorry, I'm probably gonna read a different card later. But this piece of evidence is really bad. It just says that like PC wasn't real in the context of Obama, but the reason that Obama failed was because he wasn't able to put priorities first, which is actually like a PC. It's a reason why PC is true. You should read this piece of evidence. It just indicates that like Obama, and also it gives the specific context of like the 2009 recession, and says that a wall of opposing Republicans were built on bad faith objections, but there are more Republicans in the Senate at that time. And the stuff about Trump just isn't responsive. The New American Economy stuff says immigration is key to infrastructure. This is just in the context of status quo immigration in September. Biden's release, which isn't responsive because means that like those immigrants are already here, the immigrants that are key to infrastructure are already here. The argument's really bad. It says that man, first round of the day is rough. Like it's just describing status quo immigration in September of 2020. Like Biden's already done stuff that lets more immigrants come over. There's no reason why this answer is responsive. Then this next fiat argument, I answered that above. Like bipartisanship is totally abusive. We've read a couple of pieces of evidence that indicate that Republicans don't like immigration, means that it creates implications for congressional debates. This Piper evidence is really bad. You should extend the Ing evidence here. It's a study that talks about why warming happens on an exponential curve, not on a linear curve. The Piper evidence assumes like a linear increase, but Ng is really good, says that as warming increases, things like wildfires and ice turning into liquid, which absorbs light, create an exponential curve to immigration, which will kill us all. The Losos evidence is really good here. It says that, and it also answers the non evidence. The Losos evidence is really good. It says that it's not so much that like people model based on infrastructure. The Losos evidence indicates that spending is really good because it forces other people to compete with us because green infrastructure is just really popular in the world. This evidence that the non evidence specifically is really bad. Says that it says that carbon emissions. It just says that the U.S. is the highest contributor right now, which is probably a reason why the Losos evidence is actually true, because it indicates that, when we pass the infrastructure bill, it puts $4 trillion into green technology, which resolves all the problems that Nam and Piper are talking about, because it produces a kind of a method that forces China to compete with us over doing good things. That's like the whole idea of the DISAD. We don't have to win the entirety of the DISAD. We just have to win a risk of the net benefit. Go to the parole counter plan first. The permutation argument, it still links to the net benefit. Our link is in the context of passing through Congress. Read our uniqueness evidence. It's really good. It contains the link says that anything passing through Congress triggers congressional fights because Republicans are constantly looking to drive a wedge, and that forces like Manchin and Sinema to back off of the green infrastructure stuff. They say the counter plan links to the net benefit if it solves any of the AF. That's absolutely not true, because the counter plan is about the way that it gets pushed through Congress. This Cox and Rodriguez evidence is really bad. It's based in 2009, but we read the same authors from 2015 who indicate that after 2009, Obama was able to use executive unilateral authority in order to pass the plan. Proves the solvency stuff. They've conceded that parole is able to solve the plan because parole is able to be granted to the Uyghur people, which resolves all of the impacts they're going for. They make an ethics argument on case, which is really bad, because we've obviously shown that like we're capable of responding to the ethical implications of the plan by resolving it with parole. It's just a question of like how we do it. The solvency evidence, it says legislation sends a signal no. The third plank of the counter plan solves. It says that we send an announcement we send an announcement out that resolves the Kuzmic evidence, because it indicates that because like he says that parole is unrevocable, which okay.
Just to clarify,
8 seconds left.
Would you say?
Oh no, never mind.
Just to clarify, you didn't read that new card, right?
No.
Okay. I'm gonna take my 3:30 starting now. That is time. Yeah, so obviously no new cards. And the order is going to be case on top, where I'll talk about solvency, and then I'll talk about, it'll be case and then kind of like an overview. And then the infrastructure DA and the parole CP. All right, when everyone's ready, if I could get some confirmation.
I'm good.
Okay, cool. Yeah. All right. So first off, on solvency, you can extend my A card that the United States should remove restrictions and grant P2 status, that it spurs an international coalition to stop genocide. These arguments were functionally conceded. My opponent did not get to them in their speech with enough time to satisfactorily respond to the arguments and the contentions that I made. Additionally, there are no arguments that are put on the fact that open immigration weakens China power and tech, and my D card that we have an ethical obligation to accept the Chinese victims of oppression. That means you sign your ballot right now, because the affirmative is the only functional method within this debate to accept victims of oppression, especially when I prove why the counterplan is undesirable and unpreferable. And extend that immigration leads to structural reform in China. There were no arguments made on this either. And then extend cold conceded advantages, so that China is committing genocide, that we have an obligation to act on behalf of this genocide, and that we need action now. And additionally, that immigration is key to global democracy, that the alternative to this is war, which checks back for my opponent's existential impacts, that China needs to be the top focus to prevent a global illiberal order, and that democracy is key to prevent violence and war, and prevent and increase welfare. Excuse me. So the plan solves in 4 ways. The plan shows a resolve for human rights, which causes China to back down. The plan builds an international coalition to check China. We let in workers, which undermines their capabilities. And the immigrants put pressure to reforms on China that make China less regressive and renders them a non-genocidal state eventually. Additionally, the counter... Yeah. So we can go to the infrastructure DA now. The main thing to take away from my case overview, though, is just like most of case has been conceded, including my ethical obligation. That outweighs anything else in the debate. But even if you don't buy that, going to the infrastructure DA, first of all, my first contention is mishandled. This first card is not about a bill not being passed. It's about procedural hurdles, which means that the bill that eventually gets passed on infrastructure won't be the same as what's currently proposed. So there's no way to know if it'll actually include all of these climate provisions. Additionally, on the responses to my that the plan is bipartisan, that fiat solves the link. The interpret fiat that my opponent reads is bad and should have been read in the 1NC. This is just a problematic version of fiat that doesn't solve or that doesn't answer back. But additionally, my opponent reads PC as if it's actual currency. It's fictional, and my card on that says Biden must push on all fronts to secure wins warrant has other warrants. That's enough to satisfy the infrastructure DA. Additionally, there's nothing to link the infrastructure DA to, because the parole CP is problematic. One, my opponent dropped agent CP's bad. My opponent dropped no solvency, and my opponent dropped that the CP wouldn't even be allowed, that it's banned. So there's nothing to weigh on the CP, and genocide outweighs. Whew, good debate.
Can you all hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So I did take out my headphones. So I'm going to be able to read my RFD. I'm going to take this time now to go fill out my ballot, and I will be right back with y'all.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that round. I had an anxiety thing halfway through. It was the strangest shit.
No, you're fine.
Yeah, I don't know what happened. I had a mini anxiety attack for a second. That was the weirdest stuff. It was yeah. Oh man, that hasn't happened to me before. That was weird. What if I have stage fright? Oh, someone said streaming and I went, oh, can't debate anymore.
Yeah, me too.
Alrighty. Is everyone here? And can y'all hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, I can hear you. I'm here.
All right. So sorry about that, y'all. It was really funny. I was trying to speak to y'all before the debate happened, and I was like, wow, these debaters are just ignoring me. Like, okay. I was like, whatever, we'll just do this. Because I was like trying to see if y'all had questions, and then I was letting y'all know that like I'm in a dual forensic household. So the reason I won't have my camera on is because of the bandwidth in our apartment. And it was just me. It was like my mic on my headphones. So that's really funny. I'm glad y'all can hear me now because I was worried about giving me RFD, but cool beans. Awesome. So what I'm going to do, if y'all haven't been judged by me before, is I'm just going to read my RFD and then I'll open the floor for questions.
Okay.
Cool beans. So great job today. First round of the tournament. So I ended up voting for the affirmative in today's debate because I think that they're winning that war and genocide outweigh the non-existential threat of climate change. I think that the negative isn't spending enough time on the CP debate. There isn't enough offense on why the permutation is not legitimate and or responses to why all actor counterplans are bad and abusive. I think that both debaters could be doing a better job of internalizing the impacts across the whole entire debate. I think that a lot of times there's like two ships passing in the night and we're making a lot of claims that are just unwarranted and not theoretically legitimate. So at the point where the permutation checks back for the counter plan and the neg kicks the T, it is the politics DA versus case. And I think that the AF has sufficient turns that are dropped by the negative to mitigate the politics DA. I honestly don't buy that fiat checks back for politics DAs. I don't think that the AF defends these claims or that they are necessarily theoretically legitimate, so I don't vote there. I think that the AF is winning, that the plan outweighs the counter plan, outweighs the disadvantage, and that there's no way of knowing that the infrastructure bill that is going to pass now would be the same regardless of passing the plan. Also, I buy that the articulation of the infrastructure bill wouldn't actually solve back for climate change because of the impact defense that climate change is not an existential threat, and therefore we should prioritize via the ethical obligation, genocidal, and the war impacts. So there are a few things in this debate that were a little frustrating for me. I think that the negative team needs to have impacts coming out of the 1NC for topicality. So you're giving me nothing that even if you collapsed it to vote for coming out of your constructive speech. So we have nothing talking about the LD rules, education, or fairness. We're just talking about like our standards and then kind of jumping to our next piece. Further, I think that if you're going for a topical counter plan, you need to be spending a lot more time in the constructive speech explaining why it's theoretically legitimate, why your like offense on case doesn't link to the counter plan, and why it's legitimate. So I'm buying a lot of the claims from the affirmative that, hey, like this is just the AF. It wouldn't be like allowed in law. And there's no really responses to how like negative fiat checks back for it not being a law or any type of mitigation. So I'm granting a lot of that to the affirmative. Further, I think that the AF needs to do a way better job of like, you're going for some of these claims that I just don't buy are theoretically legitimate, like fiat checks back for all politics disads. Like, real, like, garner that, or what ground would be left for the negative team?
I'm sorry,
so the negative.
You cut out a little
sorry.
bit. Sorry, you cut out a little bit. Can you like kind of restart with that?
Yeah, of course. So sorry. Usually I have my headphones on, so my partner and I are both giving our RFDs right now. So hopefully my mic isn't picking up his as well. So basically what I was saying is that your claims on the disadvantage about how, let me go to it specifically.
So I think you're right.
1 second.
Canada, so that just leaves case. Now I think that the NR makes the case pretty close here.
No link fiat means that the plan happens immediately and by definition bipartisan. It passes the Dems, House Republican Senate, is passed by Biden. And then also, I thought there was another one.
Yeah, I know which ones you're talking about.
Yeah. So I think that like these are just not advantageous to you. I think you're wasting time running these because I don't know how many judges would pick you up on these type of claims. Like that literally means that the negative team can negative team came out and said, like, refuted a lot of these claims stronger, then it would bolster the legitimacy of like their disadvantage. But I think that the affirmative, you're sufficiently like swamping the disad by having so much against it, so then it becomes like there's not really any outs for the negative in this debate. So that's where I end up casting my ballot for the affirmative. But just personally for me, like those claims about like durable fiat and how fiat works, I'm really garnering more for the negative, where they were like, yo, it's probably not gonna pass, like just hunky-dory, like, right, how politics work.
Okay.
But other than that, I think y'all did a good job. I think that we need to have more preempts coming out of the debate, like the negative and their rebuttals telling me where the app's going to go for and why I should be preferring the disadvantage, and as well as impact calculus. So comparing the world of the negative team versus the world of the affirmative, and that's for both teams.
Okay.
Like, why are you winning your impacts? And I think that the affirmative in this case did that more effectively, leveraging their framework of the ethical obligations. That's how I viewed the round. Any questions?
Nope, not for me.
No, thanks.
Cool, kids. Good luck, y'all.
Which is fine. I think you can